With the SXSW out of the way, and of course the upcoming WonderCon, I thought I'd throw my 2 cents into some thoughts about what is about to happen, especially on the concern of a grave problem that has plagued the Sonic franchise since around 2006. It's not specifically the dipping quality of the games, although that is a big one. I'm talking about one that's really big. One that could damage the franchise's reputation for a very, very long time. Of course, you all probably know about Tracy Yardley's comments towards Christians and cops, and white people, and you might also know that the IDW editor-in-chief was recently fired. And you probably also have heard about Mr. Aubrey Sitterson. Now, that is the kind of behavior that has led to IDW's 90% drop in profits. I repeat, 90% drop in profits from people just being jackasses on the internet. Now, while Tracy is comparable to Dan Slott in this matter, Ian is more comparable to Pablo Hidalgo. In other words, he doesn't give two shits about what he's working with, he hates what he's working with, and he wishes to make it into his own image, rather than actually fix whatever problems there are with his image, if that makes any sense. Now we're gonna get into the fun part. History. Everyone loves a little bit of history now, don't they? And this starts with the whole lawsuit. Mostly. Now, people like to talk about how Kim Penners is the primary reason as to why the reboot happened and all of the above. And to some extent, they're right. However, the reboot did not even need to happen because they could have just as easily not used his concepts. In fact, they very easily could have avoided it and then just acted like nothing ever happened. Simple as that. No need to reboot or they can just do what they want to do and be on their way. And what else gets me is that Sega didn't even seem to notice. In fact, this seems to be why they rehired Ian Flynn to begin with to work on IDW, because they had no idea what was going on, and they seemed to not even know that there were any mandates to begin with. So if they don't know what's going on, then how are they supposed to know this guy's the one who single-handedly tanked the entire comic by rebooting it and making it based off of the video games? Which is not exactly a bad thing, but the sales afterwards tanked. And before you say, well, I like the reboot, and that's fine. You can like the reboot all you want, but the fact remains the sales tanked.
This company is being bled like a stuck pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That
Charlie.
right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day.
Okay, so I got footage for this, and here are the average sales from the reboot. Now I'm going to start with Sonic the Hedgehog's average, which averaged up to 9,345.16 issues sold per issue. And for Sonic Universe, it averaged up to 7,756.32 issues. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting, even comparison. Now, here's 259. It sold around 3,267, whereas right here it sold, the direct sales were not particularly high, and even then it's not good compared to other things. You also have to keep in mind, though, is that there's a drop in subscription, there's a lot of things that go into this, but subscriptions certainly did not help, and a lot of people online talk about how after the reboot I just stopped subscribing, and a good portion of them did. So I don't exactly what percentage of these are subscription. I'd say a pretty good chunk of them were subscriptions, but even then that's still a pretty big loss. Now, I was looking through the issues, and I saw 160. So Ian Flynn's first issue, and I decided, okay, let's see how well this does. And 7,587 is pretty good. Sold fairly well. The demand was certainly very high. Now, let's go back to December 2006. So, issue 170. Look at that. It went from 7,000 to 6,000. So that's about a 600. Yeah, that's a 600 issue drop. Not a whole lot, which means that people aren't going to the comic book stores and buying these comics. Rather, they're just ignoring them. So, yeah. Supply is very low on this, which does not help Ian's situation out either. Now, why the sales drop? Well, my guess is that the comic started to appeal less and less to the original fanbase, and it didn't quite draw in a new fanbase, if that makes any sense. Because as I could see from supply and demand, there wasn't really a huge demand for the comics, so the supply started to dwindle a little bit. Keep in mind that some of this data actually came from before the reboot, so it was starting to drop before then, which surprised me a lot, because I heard about how much people really liked Ian Flynn's work. I mean, much of these comics are average at best, but the fact they were dropping that early in his time at Archie, I thought was kind of shocking. It's not as bad as the reboot, though. The reboot itself gets much, much worse in terms of the sales, and the data there showed it. Now, while the reboot sales did increase for a short while, that was because it was a reboot. People were curious to see where the series would go, and people were not particularly happy about the reboot. But these can still be traced back to his early issues at Archie, in one way or another. Now, I'm probably going to be the third person in history to point this out, but his stories have this problem called the Worf effect. This is one of many problems. Now, this is where a character is either too weak to do anything, or they're too strong to be interesting. And this happens several points. Now, here's a pre-reboot example, alright? This is Nicole and Tails. Tails is breaking into a prison, which is made of nanites that Nicole controls. Now, look at this scene from earlier, last issue. You'll notice that Nicole is able to repel missiles, and she said several times that she would protect Elias's child and his wife. Now, for some reason, she didn't do this to stop Tails, even though she's also shown to be able to teleport people. So why doesn't she stop him, if she knows he's going to start causing chaos and mayhem to begin with? In Spark of Life, Ian can't decide whether Nicole is supposed to be intelligent or retarded throughout most of the issue. In the same sentence. Now, the next problem I'd like to talk about is the common use of MacGuffins and, of course, the Deus Ex Machina. A very common trope that he likes to pull out of his ass. Let's start with Spark of Life and the whole red ring thing. First of all, how did he know that that would actually overclock Nicole and make her more powerful? And second of all, that's not how software works. It's just going to make her faster. It's not actually going to make her more powerful unless you change around her fucking coding. And that was one out of many from Spark of Life. And the way it was used destroyed any tension that could have had. Instead, she just stops him. Okay. It just closes the door. Nothing exciting, just closes the door. Closes the door. Now, despite how much I did like Eggman's Dozen, this one unfortunately suffers from similar problems. Not as badly, but they still are put into that issue in such a big way that it breaks the pacing. Problem number 1. Why is it that all these traps and all these problems just so happen to happen at the exact same time? And the comic makes this big deal out of how, once the radio tower has been destroyed, Naugus and Wendy's powers will fall down and go away. And yes, they do, but for some reason, Wendy still has her powers. But yet her minions are freed for a while, so why were they freed if they were under Wendy's control? It makes no fucking sense. The next problem is one I think most people should be aware of, and that's his constant use of shock. And what do I mean by shock? Well, for instance, Sally and Nicole are now a couple. Geoffrey St. John is now a villain. Ixis Nagas is king. Sally is a robot. Sonic and Tails are fighting. Things that really didn't amount to anything and didn't exactly need to be in there. The only one I can think of that actually would have worked was Sally becoming a robot, and he did not pull that off very well. At least not in the first few issues. I was never able to finish that. I'll probably finish it at some point, but let me just say this, is that the first 2 issues were not set up very well at all. And then there's his Mega Man Sonic crossover. Now, here's the main problem with this. Eggman did not invent the roboticizer, but he teams up with Dr. Wily, using his robot designs, which he didn't even create. So they start working together, and it invalidates Eggman in Sonic the Hedgehog. I'll tell you why. It's because he can't generate sales with his own storylines. With normal means, he actually has to use shock value just for them to sell. Which is probably why Ian was able to keep the comic going after he fucked everything up. What's funny, though, is that Screw Attack was able to make the whole Teddy Roosevelt versus Albert Einstein thing actually work. And yet a professional comic book writer pretty much screws up the whole concept the moment he gets a chance to write about it. Fantastic. One thing I would like to talk about is his possible use of fetishes. That kinda creeped me out, because a few of these issues might contain these. I can't tell. It's hard to tell if this is his fetish, or if this is some kind of bizarre thing he thought was a good idea. Also, aren't you supposed to be married?
Gentlemen, behold! I have made love to this machine! And now, upon retrospect, I ask why.
I'm sure someone thinks that's pretty neat.
Characters? What the hell are those? Is what went through Ian Flynn's mind when he first started writing the comic book. Now, his original fanfictions had very bad character development. However, the pre-reboot sort of improved upon it to some extent, and then the reboot, he didn't improve at all. Then again, he didn't improve upon anything in the reboot, so what exactly was the point of me asking for anything more than an idiot who was able to write a Teletubbies Sonic the Hedgehog crossover? Right now, I'm here to talk about character development. Characters usually change with little to no indication as to why, how, or when the hell this even happened. Example, Geoffrey St. John, for some reason, joined Nagas's forces? I don't understand. But when was that brought up? And furthermore, when did he join? It's never brought up anywhere. Spark of Life completely throws out the idea of the characters regaining their memories of the old world, and it gives a very half-assed explanation as to why they're supposed to be dating. It doesn't make any sense. And it's built up in such a way that it doesn't feel natural. It feels very, very out of character. And throughout the entire reboot, Sonic and all the Sega cast never changed. They are static cardboard cutouts throughout the entire reboot. And one of the selling points of the comics was the character development. So, the main selling point for your product, you managed to fuck it up royally. But why the hell does the Rhodesian badger / raccoon have to constantly go into all these details, all these minute details that make the video go on for so long? Well, context. And if you stay tuned for this long, I applaud you, because I need to give an idea of why I think his book is probably going to suck. Because a good portion of the things that he was doing at Archie, ultimately they led to the comic's demise, because they were driving customers away. People were not interested in seeing how poorly the comic was going to turn out, because they knew that his comics were just going to turn out poorly. Whether or not they liked it is up to them. But the point I'm making is that people did not particularly flock to his comics when he wrote them, like they might have with Bowlers or Penders or any of the other. They simply did not flock to Ian like they did all the other writers. And Archie knew all about this. Sega did not. Otherwise, they would have kicked Ian's sorry ass off the comic, or they would have never even hired him for IDW to begin with. But why would Archie release the sales numbers if they thought the comic was going to succeed? And to those who are going to say, well, Archie canceled the comic because of the lawsuit. Well, then in that case, they should have canceled it by 251, because they would have done it earlier from the lawsuits. They had to get rid of so many characters just to keep the comic going. And if they wanted to cancel it for that reason, they could have done it long ago, which would have been a preferable option over this. Just keep in mind, the sales that I had shown you came from Archie, not Sega. Sega did not release the sales. What didn't help, however, was the mandates. But it seems like the mandates weren't actually made by Sega, since they were broken several times. And yes, I'm putting these up on the screen right now so you can see it. But they were broken several times, and not only that, but when asked about it, a Sega representative apparently didn't even seem to notice. What else is funny is that a few employees at Sega used the word Mobian on Twitter. What exactly does this say about the mandates? What it says to me is that Ian Flynn outright lied. And this isn't even the first time he has lied. He has lied on several occasions. Because why would Sega break their own mandates? It's almost as if someone's directly lying to us. Now, we all know the story of how Ian heroically tried to save the freedom fighters and fought tooth and nail to keep them in the Yeah, well, here's a clip of him saying that the freedom fighters were outdated.
Would you be able to tell us exactly what happened when you guys had to reboot the comic, and why John Gray said that you needed to fight to keep the freedom fighters in the new continuity?
I don't know how many specifics I can get into, because, here's something that folks don't seem to understand. I think we're going to be coming back to that with later questions, is there is private talk between businesses that remains private because it's business talk. And we don't really let it out because it becomes huge talking points online, and it just becomes a headache. With the reboot, there were a lot of circumstances, and my ultimate goal was to keep the feel of the old style of stories while doing something that was more faithful to the games. Because ultimately, that's where I was taking the book anyway.
Right.
And this was just the fast forward button. The issue with the Freedom Fighters is that they are from an old, defunct spin-off from the franchise. They're not really considered high-value properties, I guess, in terms of the overall franchise. Because as much as you may love Sad I Am, it doesn't really reflect what Sonic is. Not now, and not for a while.
Right.
So Sega wants anything representing their product to be clearly representative of that product. Having stuff that diverges from that is not good. That said, they have given us an extremely large amount of creative license with this series, even post-reboot. So,
And you want more evidence of this? Oh, I'll give you more evidence.
if I didn't think that it would seriously derail things, I would push for it harder. But I honestly think that if we were to try to go that route, the fan backlash would be detrimental to the book. And I think a lot of the shipping and relationship nonsense that swirls around the book kind of drags it down anyway. There's nothing more frustrating than really putting a lot of effort into a story and then seeing nothing but discussion over one line of dialogue or one scene around one. There's just too much relationship drama. So I'm kind of done with it in general. So this isn't to say I don't support a Sally Nicole pairing. I'm just kind of done with pairings at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back there. And you get another fresh start, which may be a little too soon after the previous fresh start, but hey, it's gonna be good.
It's all. I've already got a ever-growing notebook of ideas.
Yeah. I think I saw something about how you had a pitch ready to go, like as soon as it was announced they were doing it or something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I like to work ahead.
Yeah. Well, hey,
by like a year or 5 or so.
When you pretty much got it in the bag, I mean, hey, you might as well.
You're right, Joe. Here we go. But a lot of people that read and grew up with the original cartoons in particular, and some of these characters went from the cartoons into the comics, very curious about the characters that comprise the Freedom Fighters, as they were called. This is like the Sally Acorn and the Bunny Rabbit, and there's quite a few of them. Are those characters gone for good? Is there any chance we might see them again? Kind of where does that leave us with characters like that?
Well, when you have a new partnership like the one we have right now, it gives you a chance. The possibilities are limitless when you have the kind of universe that we're working with a new partnership. So what I can say is that you will see characters that you know and love, and you will see new characters that I think that you will learn to know and love because of the guidance of Ian and the artists who I think you'll be pretty excited about when we announce them. So
I'm really stoked about some of the new ideas we got coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things when you sent the synopsis of what you had laid out, I remember thinking, I wish we could just post this on.
And not only has he lied, but he's also thrown the fanbase under the water despite the fanbase making him what he is today. The images you are seeing on screen are from Twitter, where a guy going by the name of the Badass Echidna asked Ian about the Sally design that he thought was official. It was not. Ian said it wasn't. However, what happened next was quite interesting, is that Badass Echidna said that Tangle was a Sally ripoff, and then he blocked AJ on Twitter. Seems to show that you have no confidence in your new characters. And it seems like you know that they're going to be a ripoff of some previous character to begin with. And his next two characters would only reinforce this idea. Now here are the two new characters I was talking about, Ruff and Tumble. They are mercenaries who work together, and they just so happen to be brothers. Sounds kind of familiar. Like, I can't put on... Yeah, they're Sleet and Dingo. Not only that, but they're the result of Sleet and Dingo sleeping with Vector and Bark, and then Bark and Vector's child sleeping with Geoffrey St. John, and then the twins that shared Geoffrey as a second father having twins of his own, which led to these things. These guys are horribly bankrupt. And you had two characters in the same franchise who did the exact same thing. You have 3 already, so you're already taking out characters that you said were bad, and then you're replacing them with things that you think are better. Aquarius199 pointed this out, and even showed another form of Geoffrey, which looks very similar to the guy on the left. So you won't use the characters that you made which people liked, but you're willing to copy down other people's characters just to take a jab at them. Possibly. We don't know why he did it, but he did it, and now we have to deal with it. Fantastic. And not even the people who defended you to the death are going to support you anymore. Because you've already lied to them, you've already thrown them under the bus, you've already thrown out some of the things that they really liked. You're really trying to destroy this comic, aren't you? It's like you hated it to begin with, and so you already sabotaged it. And you're doing the same thing that crippled the reboot by basing it off of a game whose story was panned by the community. Not a whole lot of people liked Force's storyline, or even its gameplay for that matter, and that's what you're basing this new comic on? Ian, you have learned nothing from this whole ordeal. And if the sales are anything to go by, this is a horrible decision to base it off of Forces especially, because the first time you pulled this stunt, the story you were basing it off of was already 7 years old, and it went on for far too long. And you kept it going for 29 issues. That is far too long for an arc to go on for. And you want to know why? Because you have no actual direction of where you want to go bring the comic. If you've actually had a vision, you wouldn't have to constantly reuse concepts, screw up characters, and bring into the continuity things that don't even make any sense in context. Go, Ian. You have no vision, you don't care about what you're actually writing for, you just haphazardly slap everything together without any rhyme or reason. So I would have to pay for a comic written by an idiot who has no vision of what he wants to do, who doesn't want to do anything original, who treats the fanbase like garbage, and he has an ego that's the size of Skynet. And I'm certainly not going to pay for a subscription for a service that I'm probably going to use once or twice, if I ever decide to get around to it.
That's right! $500 for the bullshit!
What's interesting is that at some point he said that he made the comic more like Other M, which he says was bad. So why did you make the comic like Other M, Ian? What was the point of that if you said that it was bad? Why are you trying to make it like something that was bad? Or is it because you really, really hate the characters? Wondering the question of, why the hell is he doing all this? Well, need you look no further than his treatment of Sally. She gets shot, she is made incompetent, she is roboticized. And then you look at his treatment of Amy Rose. She is put into situations where she doesn't even need to be, where her involvement in the story would be better off. Why would he do this? And the whole lesbian thing. And then you also look at Geoffrey St. John. He's made to be a villain. He's made to be the bad guy. What is all this about? Well, could it be because he has a grudge against someone because he knows that he can't be as good as him? Or maybe it's because he wants Sonic and Amy to be a couple. But yeah, that's literally the reason as to why. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to read this to you now. This is on his opinions of Sonic X Amy. And I quote, "They are like kindred spirits, adventurers with a strong moral center, extremely powerful abilities, and an impish independence to make them unstoppable. The two of them together would be like poetry in motion, playing off each other's abilities, but it wouldn't be hero in stereo. Amy is a compassionate, thoughtful person when not distracted by Sonic thoughts, and her adoration of him doesn't overrule her priorities all the time. She would be able to focus him, and their banter, as he would tease her, would be fun and endearing. They're a lively young couple that kick butt." If you need any further proof of this, look at issue 290's cover for 1 second. Okay, are we good? Good. Now, I know I mentioned that in a previous video, but I think I need to hammer that in, because he ruined a comic because two characters could not be in a relationship. That is True Love Hearts level of stupid, Ian. That is absolutely pathetic. However, though, there is some good news to this. There is a petition to get him off the comic. Now, before you say, well, you're gonna ruin his life, please, he has several other comics that he's working on. He can easily take a fall from one. It's not gonna ruin his career. AW will probably not listen because Ian agrees with all their political viewpoints, but Sega certainly will, because they have been known to listen to fans quite a lot. After all, we got the Supersonic DLC to be free, so hey, we can do that. We can do all sorts of things. Yeah, Sega themselves are a company that is based around profits, while IDW itself has been focused almost entirely on politics, and I think that might have also been part of why IDW was adamant to hire Ian, because he has the same political agenda. I mean, even going through a lot of his bumblecasts and comics, I think just confirms this. But if IDW doesn't comply, then they'll lose the rights, and it'll go over to someone else. And if Sega realizes, okay, Ian, you're destroying our reputation, you need to go, then that'll work too. But IDW themselves will fight because they know what Ian has done to some of the characters, and they know he has been very blatant about putting politics into the book. And no, Ian, couch casting does not make you a good writer. It does not. The worst case scenario you can see of getting rid of Ian Flynn is that this thing is going to take control of the comic. And you know damn well that's not going to make anything any better. And I still can't figure out what it's supposed to be. But hey, if we get rid of him, we might get someone new who's better. I say maybe. Well, either way, if you stuck around this long, kudos to you. Thank you. And like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And also special thanks to nintrendodude. With your help, this video would definitely not have happened. So, T-sip hamot on Talk Tech. And hope you all have a nice day.